First of all, I will thank CLFMA for inviting me as a keynote speaker. I am Secretary Fisheries. I didn't have much idea about compound live till I held the charge of Secretary Animal Husbandry. So this is part of the things. Most of the fisheries, there are capture fisheries, there are fisheries which are done in very, very traditional way. Of course, the shrimp and other things require a lot of feed, a specialized feed. So after coming to the animal husbandry sector, I saw the importance of animal feed and its importance to the national economy as such. Today's this symposium is about changing dynamics of animal agriculture. So what do we see by this? The first we will see is changing consumer preferences. So we will go for more and more animal proteins, number one. More and more of convenience foods, or which can be cooked very quickly. These are, I think, this something. Despite we see that process in reverse, there will be always fringe players, but I see this probably the main trend that will continue if we see how the other countries or developed countries have progressed. So that means there will be bigger demand, greater demand for animal protein, whether the meat or fish or a derivative compound of them. And second, to be presented in a form that will take less time to cook. Fortunately, our country has been a country where there are a lot of people who do not eat meat. So for our sector, probably that looks very antagonistic. So I always tell wherever I go that many places fish is a wonder to the people, the average consumer. So I always say that men in the civilization started eating fish and meat before he learned to eat cereals, because cereals require fire to break it down into something that can be digested by human beings. So we have very short alimentary canal compared to the herbivorous animals. So we naturally will not be able to digest the cellulose. That's how it is. So anyway, so changes in consumer preference is something that is going on, and it is a process. I don't think none of us can really reverse much. So the net result is that the demand for animal protein will increase, whether it is fish, meat, and other. Being a Secretary Fisheries, I will always wish that people eat more fish than meat. So anyway, that's up to the consumer. So once there is a increased demand for this product, then production will have to be increased. And production has to come from culture, because the extraction of this kind of food from the natural systems, whether it was a grazing system in animal husbandry, the pastoralism, or the capture fisheries in the oceans and the rivers, that's limited because of whatever resource we have, it is limited. And we have a large country with fairly dense population, and our population will still increase for some time before it stabilizes. So we are actually a land scarce country. So most of this increased demand has to come from the culture. And once we do the culture, there will be a requirement for feed. And that is where you all are there to address this challenge. We have a number of schemes that Dr. Yadav has already very succinctly he told the trends and all this. I am very thankful to him for giving a lot of perspectives on this. We have a lot of schemes in the government, and from 2014 very specifically recognized that animal husbandry fisheries, these are the animal protein sector will grow faster, and this is probably will be the key driver of the Indian agriculture to fulfill the slogan of doubling the farmer's income. And so the schemes, as he has already said, then the National Livestock Mission, Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, Fisheries Infrastructure Development Fund, the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, and of course there is a big program on disease control in animal husbandry. So, number of schemes, and I am sure these schemes will increase investment in these sectors to a large extent. The targets are also humongous. Like Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana envisages increase in fish production from 15 million tons to 22 million. So that's the near-term target. And the longer-term target, government is working out on 2047 target. There are 100 years of independence. We propose that we will reach the consumption level of fish to about what is there in Japan, almost about 25 kilos per annum per capita, which at current time is about 5 to 6 kilos per capita. So 4 times increase, that means that much will come from culture, because I think the natural resources, our oceans and rivers are the more or less stagnant. We can do more value into those kind of captures, but we will not be able to physically expand much beyond what we are actually doing right now. So once that comes, then the requirement of feed industry will be tremendous. Currently, we all know, like, we prepare these feeds partly from crops, crop-based cereals, and partly from animal products, which normally we call it as a waste. Actually not waste, which a waste is a waste till we know how to use it. So that's how I look at a waste. Then whatever was not fit for human consumption, that is going into the animal. That's my very, very rudimentary understanding of it. Now once we get into the culture part, we feed our big population, and we also start thinking about exports. We must be very, very efficient in production. And that is where our feed cost has to be kept at a level which will make our farmers to compete. Otherwise, they will simply move away from this sector. And that is where the challenge before the industry. Dr. Yadav has already told about things. There are issues like using GM techniques and all these things, so that the crops, the productivity increases, and the risks in terms of diseases goes down. These are some of the things that has to be taken care of. The government is already working on those issues. But from the industry perspective, we have to always see, like, what all we can do at our level to see that the feed cost remains within the limits. And that is, therein lies the innovation. We are a country with very, very different agroclimatic region. Just like as human beings, we eat different types of foods at different places and different seasons. Whether the same thing is required for the animals, or we keep giving one standard solution, whether it is the hills of Arunachal or whether it is the coast of Kerala, at least from fishery sector, I say, for aquaculture, or we make some variations. That is something we have to look at. This is a challenge, because right now, just like Green Revolution, we had followed one particular system, like, okay, water, fertilizers, some amount of pesticide, disease control, and a market, and a MSP. That is how we grew our staple crops, rice and wheat, and which we were importing in 1965. And I was just born around that time, and that time we were begging USA under PL 480 for wheat, and USA was threatening us during Indo-Pakistan War 1965 that if you start a war, then if you don't close it, then we will block this PL 480. That time our late Prime Minister gave a slogan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kishan, and that's where we are, and we are now one of the biggest exporters of rice. And so wheel has turned. So that was a very, very standard set prescription, easy to understand by the farmers. But now, with the kind of dynamics that is setting in, we have to be much more attenuated, much more nuanced in our approach to creation of feed for different segments. There will be some farmers who may like to have very high production, and will also take very high risks. I see in shrimp sector, very, very high levels of stockings. They take a huge amount of risk. There will be some farmers who like average rate of return, who do not want to maximize per unit, that means per hectare, the productivity, but we like to keep the risk level at certain level and not allow it to go beyond a particular point. So I would say that because feed is almost 50 to 60% of the cost of aquaculture, and in terms of dairy, I think it's almost about 70%, a little below, higher than that. The challenge lies in whether we maximize per unit of feed, our output. I think probably that's the challenge. That is, how does the industry respond to it is a challenge I throw it to you. Quite a substantial portion of our feed is coming from agriculture products. We keep on saying that, okay, milk we produce, the value of the milk we produce is more than rice and wheat combined. But some of the rice keeps coming into the milk in terms of feed. So, since quite a big percentage of the feed that will come from agriculture, and we are already a water scarce country. We are not as abundantly endowed as the United States. How do we reduce water intensity in the feed input? Okay, it is very nice to say that we just source soybean or maize wherever it is available, try to get at the best competitive price and make our feed in the most competitive way. How do we reduce the water intensity? Because once there is a water stress, then everybody will be affected. So whether it is a job of agriculture companies or it is a job of feed companies for animal husbandry and fisheries, it's a common problem. So this is something we have to look at, especially the crops that gets into the feed, whether you can do something to reduce the water intensity of the stress. That is something we must do at the earliest. The way our agriculture has developed in many cases, in some of it's basically by subsidized water and subsidized power. I don't say that subsidy is really bad, because without this, in many places today, probably agriculture is not possible. Especially, I worked extensively in Tamil Nadu state. Without probably free power, 50% of the Tamil Nadu agriculture will just stop. So, how do we create better systems to ensure that water use is optimized? A small example I want to give. There is a district called Ramnathpuram in Tamil Nadu. The Israelis experts came and somewhere in 1998 to study and provide optimum solution. That's a very water stressed area. 600 mm is the annual rainfall, and mostly it's a black cotton soil area, so water doesn't penetrate below. So whatever rainfall is there, the soil holds it. And mostly paddy cultivation is there, only 3 months, one single crop area. What the Israelis told is radically different from what we were thinking. They said all your low-lying areas in that area don't cultivate during the rainy season. Allow the waters to be stored. Use that water to irrigate the upland area. And once the water is used, use the moisture to do this low-lying area. It's difficult because you have to involve the entire community and do agricultural planning, spatial planning. But this is something could have given double the output than what is currently produced in that particular area. So we have to look at very, very innovative solutions to reduce water intensity. The second important point, how do we increase the use of renewable energy in the production of inputs that get into feed? This is something we have to look at a very serious way, because ultimately energy will become more and more expensive, and especially the conventional energy, whether it is diesel or coal-fired electricity or the grid electricity, it will keep on going up. So how do you keep the cost down? The cost has to be kept down by using more and more renewable energy like solar or anything that comes out of solar. How do you do that? A lot of innovative solutions are required for this. Over the years, I was MD of Solar Energy Corporation. We brought down the tariffs by competitive bidding from about 5 rupees 50 paisa per unit to 2 rupees. Of course, there is a lot of turmoil in the market, the COVID and all things, solar panels have gone up, but it will keep on going down because the ecosystem that has been created. So when the energy cost becomes 2 rupees, or they predict that by 2030 it will become 1.5, how do you use more and more solar into this system so that we become more competitive vis-a-vis others? Just to tell how the solar became cheaper, our companies, our EPC companies were so efficient. In fact, the Chinese themselves told that your EPC companies, they come to us, our EPC companies go out of business. What they did is, normally, if you see that you put one kilowatt or 1 megawatt of solar, it will produce about 1 megawatt unit hour. That's how it is calculated. What our people did is, for 1 megawatt capacity, they put about 1.5 megawatt of panels, and they produced 1.5 times the power using the same line. That is how they brought down the cost to about 2 rupees. Of course, another aspect of the falling interest rate, because it's a very, very capital intensive upfront investment kind of a job. So it is very sensitive to the interest rate. So when interest rate came down, naturally the prices of the electricity that will be generated and which are supposed to be fixed for 25 years came down. But the innovation of our EPC companies in solar is something that can be followed, how they have created that kind of a thinking, that kind of ecosystem to see that we remain extremely competitive in the thing. Other thing is the government's job of creating a very, very transparent kind of a system, one of the best systems in the world. So many companies, major energy companies like NG and NL, SoftBank, they all acknowledged that the Indian renewable energy system is probably one of the best in terms of transparency and investor friendliness. Anyway, how do you do that? That is, how do you increase the use of renewable energy so that one, we earn more carbon credits and we keep our costs down? That is something. Of course, there are many other issues which Dr. Yadav had pointed out. I think in the ensuing discussion, the technical discussions, all those issues will be addressed. I just want to add one more thing, since I am Secretary Fisheries. Fish meal is one of the essential ingredients in most of our aquatic feeds. And because the demand has shot up, our fishermen are catching the juvenile fish. This is a major issue. That means we are killing the hen that lays the golden egg. So they are catching the juveniles, feed plants are running, fish meal is getting into a shrimp. But maybe tomorrow there will be no fish in the ocean. So where do you catch the juveniles? Can the feed companies do something to find alternative to fish meal? This is a major challenge, and as we have, I have already told, our exports are supposed to double in the near term. Our production is supposed to grow by 70% in near term, and in the long term maybe about 4 to 5 times. And fish meal is something that is extracted from nature. Some will come from processing of the fish, of the waste part. The remaining has to come from the ocean, and we are not as abundantly blessed like Chile or Peru, where naturally, because of the cold current, mixing of the cold current and the hot warm current, they get a lot of anchovies there, and it's practically free. And I think Manoj Sharma is coming tomorrow. He will talk about aquaculture. He will tell the same thing, that Ecuador is beating us hollow now because they are become very, very efficient, primarily because of the feed cost. So this is something I just leave as a parting note to the challenge to the industry. How do we find alternative to fish meal, or find some kind of a protein, animal protein, which can to some extent replace the fish meal and moderate the demand on juvenile fish. With this, I understand that after a long time, after 4 years, this is being organized, so a lot of people are there, a lot of enthusiasm is there. I wish you all the best in this symposium, and I thank the organizers for organizing this in such a nice way, and I hope that animal protein will grow much more. Thank you very much.